All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone being here. This is kind of awesome. I mean, there's people out there, there's people in here. It's kind of great. I have to start by thanking Sarah for coming to do this with me. And Sarah and I met, I don't know what, a couple years ago, a few years ago.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, and we quickly developed I developed a fondness for her work, obviously. I've done a number of studio visits with her, and every time I go to LA, we hang out and go for a walk, and I do a studio visit. It's our relationship. But also we've developed a friendship, and so, you know, these series of talks, really, I wanted it to be conversational, which I know is a little different format from the Art History 101, but I think when you have the benefit of a living artist, it's nice to be able to have more of an open dialogue about the work, especially when we have a relationship that we can kind of share with all of you to give a little bit even more of an insight into the work. So what we're gonna do, I always like to let people know what's gonna happen, and then it will happen, is that we are gonna walk through Sarah's practice and looking at the various ways that she makes paintings and sculptures and installations, but also contextualize it a little bit in the greater sort of history of art, just to kind of show that contemporary artists don't always work simply in like a little bubble, but they're, you know, often, you know, Sarah has taken a number of art history classes. She knows everything that's come before, and so we're just gonna kind of show how that presents itself sometimes in the work.
Yeah, not everything.
Not everything. We're going to cover all of art history, guys. Get ready. Yeah, so Sarah, I wanted to start with talking about the works that are on the wall and the ways that you construct paintings, because even when it's something that's on the wall, that's on a canvas, it's never exactly just paint on a canvas. You're either collaging or you're incorporating materials, which we'll talk about a little bit further in a couple of slides. And so I kind of wanted to start here to have a conversation about how that started, if that's always been a part of your practice, if collage was kind of where you began, or if you began as a painter and then moved.
Yeah, I've always been really experimental with my practice and every way I work. And I feel like mixed media was what got me as a kid. I remember the first classes I took in 8th grade, and I just loved the idea that you could take anything and make art out of it. And also it's really an economical thing. I came up in San Francisco with a group of artists where we just didn't have money. We didn't spend money on art supplies, so it was just sort of gathering what you had. And art historically, like art pauvre and a lot of those movements just made a lot of sense to me. This one specifically is a painting that it's my idea of ceramics, which I don't even know if that makes sense to anybody else, but this painting really reminds me of ceramics. One artist that I threw in an image of that I don't think made it was Beatrice Wood, who I really like. I like the inventiveness of, like she developed her own metallic glaze. So I'm drawn to artists that like develop their own weird thing and just push their medium further than what's known as possible. There's beads in this. There's a canvas. The yellow and white is a canvas that hangs over a stretched canvas. This is also a funny painting where I was going to do a whole series of primary color paintings. I sort of get pigeonholed a lot for using pinks and purples and colors that I don't feel like people would necessarily pay attention to if I wasn't me, but so this was, I tried to do a series all in primary colors. It didn't last too long. I made like 3 and I'm like, I'm over it. But yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to show, and I also wanted to just warn in advance, we apologize in advance for any adult language that accidentally happens. It just happens sometimes when we're together. We'll try to control it, but it may, it may happen. So, but I wanted to show this because, at the beginning of modernism, and when artists such as Pablo Picasso were working to sort of break from this realistic representation of the world and really break with the picture plane, the tools that they were able to do that was collage. Like that was the actual physical way of figuring out how to restructure the surface of, in the composition. And so what I think is so interesting is that and I think is important to know is that artists today, especially Sarah, I think is one of the ones that has really sort of continued this, but in a totally unique way, in that it's all painting and it's all canvas, but that you're creating, it's almost like you're painting something and then you're applying it to the canvas that has also been painted, and then sometimes you paint over all of it, sometimes you'll incorporate other things. Like, it's really interesting because, and I think Picasso sometimes did things similar to that as well, where he would incorporate some of his previous drawings or something from another work into these collages. And I just wonder if you think much about that history, if that's just something that has always come natural to you.
I actually try not to think too much about art history when I'm making art at all, but I think the biggest similarity with Picasso is, like, when I heard the amount of paintings and artworks he made in his life, I was like, thank God, because I make a shitload of work, and sometimes I feel like I make too many paintings, but then when I heard his number, I was like, I have so many more to go. It's great. But I think collage is a very fast way of working, and people who like burn through ideas and are always seeking new ideas, it's a great medium or approach, because you can just do it and you can work on tons at the same time.
And you do always work on, every time I go to Sarah's studio, there are probably, I would say, 5
new ones?
I work on like every time I go, there's a whole new body of work that is well underway and that she's working on simultaneously. And so do you often work that way? Do you work sort of in series and think of them in relation to each other?
I work probably on like 4 or 5 different series at the same time, and but then also I have my studio-based practice and I have the works on site that are out in the world. So the works on site, it like happens in a condensed time, but I'll be thinking about it for the year leading up. So that's a different area of the studio. It's usually like a stack of papers, but sometimes I sit there and think about it.
And so I wanted to kind of show more of your works that hang on the wall and how you what I sort of think of as deconstruct the canvas. And so it's never, a painting is never strictly a painting with Sarah. It's, she'll peel away the canvas and use the stretcher bar as part of the composition, this using what is actually a part of the canvas as a grid, as a sort of another organizing structure, but also there's always these really sort of strong diagonal lines which you use with cutting and with paint and with this sort of folds, and even sometimes the canvas it'll actually continue onto the wall, and so it's never, the thing that I find totally pleasurable about your work is that every time I see something, I'm like, wait, what am I seeing? And you have to like actually spend time to see what it's made of, how it was made, because you really reinvent the canvas every single time you use it. No, you do. It's you use them in completely different ways, and so I wonder if you. Okay, I'm kind of a perfectionist. And that's why I can't make art, because I am too scared of everything. And so which is why I curate. There we go.
Yeah, but that's why you have no fear in other realms. It's funny because actually, this is like totally off the subject completely, but I always get followed by creepy people, and Anna was like, you just take their photo. And I'm like, oh my God, you just arrest the aggressor. And I don't do that in real life, but I do it in the studio. And it's, I
had this happen. I was followed by someone and he kept lapping me, and so I stood in front of his truck and took his picture and texted it to my friend, and I was like, if I disappear, this human has kidnapped me. So duly noted, smart. Everyone. Yeah. So now Sarah does that too now. So watch out, everyone.
Actually, it just happened, and then like 10 minutes later, I was like, shit, she told me take the photo, and I like didn't remember. but in the studio, I'm like aggressively going for it. But these are an interesting group of paintings because it was the transition from, they predate the Untitled Ceramics. I was really against making canvases and objects and sort of against the commercial world forever until I like wrestled on site works and figured out my painting in a way that like could withstand the market and any like potential evils that has with it. But these are these are canvases, but about sites. So I would make them about cities that I was invited to go to. So I'd never been to Santa Barbara. This is Santa Barbara 1 and 2. It's my idea of what Santa Barbara is like. And there's a real early one about Galisteo and Agnes Martin ahead in the lecture that I made like 16 years ago. about the same idea. So a lot of these are with house paints where the house paint colors have like themes. Like I did a Miami one all with like Miami themed colors, and it's just a funny way to take the control out of myself and be given the colors, and then you have to work with it.
But how do you, and sort of what I was thinking of with the boldness that you treat the canvas is that for me, like cutting it, that is such a permanent thing.
Yeah,
like,
but
do you ever cut it and you're like, oh crap, like I should not have cut that canvas?
You can't cut it on a really bad day when you feel shitty. Like there's a few days, like 2 days of the month, I'm like, you can't go in the studio because you will ruin something really important. But you just have to believe in it. And the interesting thing too, the one on the back wall, I painted the whole back. Just not even like a painting. I was like, just go crazy and paint it and don't think about it, and then cut. So then there's another level of chance where I didn't remember what was on the back. So then you have this exposed, and then you have to work with it. And that's a lot like the works on site, because there's all these things in architecture and the flow of space, and then all the stuff that's going to happen in the compressed time of making a work on site that you can't control. So it's about just opening yourself up to complete failure, and then knowing that you're not going to fail, and you're going to just flip it over and make something really amazing.
Yeah. See, I would never have any ability to do that. So again, a squished image. So this is a square, not a...
It's 72 by 70 inches.
Is
so
it?
It's a really funny, not square, but you believe, a lot of things I do like trick you into believing you're seeing something that you're not. That It's not like I set out to make trompe l'oeil or something, but I'm like, it's entertaining to me. There's a lot of humor in the work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is just yet another example of, rather than painting what we would consider the front of the canvas, the back becomes the surface, and then it hangs on the wall. And then hanging it not as it would normally be oriented. Sarah often plays with the way that the works are installed as well. Okay, this is one of my all-time favorite, one of your paintings. I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I do.
It's a lot taller. It's like 12 feet tall.
Yeah, it's huge.
72 wide.
Yeah, and Sarah's, the scale at which you work, I mean, there are some more modest works, but you'll see once we get to some of the site-specific installations, like she really works big, like big, bold. But what I am really interested in about this work and sort of talking with you is that you can see, so I consider a lot of these paintings as landscapes, as portraits. I think that even though they're abstract, from the title and from even the composition, you can often get a sense of either some sort of a body or a personality or a place or a gesture like kiss, something like I really feel like there's I think people often talk about pure abstraction, and I don't actually believe that exists ever. Yeah, and so, but I think that your work most perfectly kind of exhibits that, I guess I would say. And so on this, it's like all of these different gestures, right? Like at the bottom, it's this more gestural abstraction, but that has hints at this kind of spray paint, sort of street, art style, and also in every single one of the circles, which are these like great minimal circles, and then this beautiful purple background with this X through the center. And so it's always a combination of minimalism, gestural abstraction, color field painting, but in a really sort of fresh and today sort of sense about it. And then of course, like the way that you break it up, it's like you're actually creating a horizon line and all of those things. And so the way that she's sort of breaking up the canvas, you can see and sort of begin to identify different sort of places that represent what you would if you were looking at a landscape or a body or things like that. And so when you're doing this and when you're sort of selecting the different types of gestures and the different, like, where do you start? I don't even know if I know that. I don't know if I've ever asked that. Like, do you... Like, I'm interested to know, like, where you begin.
It starts with a feeling, or just like it starts with that aggressive moment where you take the photo, when you take the control and you just go for something.
Yeah.
But then I pull from so many sources. I was thinking at this time, I made a few paintings like this where I wanted an abstract painting that had a horizon line. It was a funny thing to me. And it just, you're taught to look at abstraction in a certain way, and you're taught to look at realistic paintings in a certain way, and it flips it. And then the X was the X was actually the last thing I did. All the circles are beaded too, and then the bottom, those things hanging are all cut and torn, ripped canvas. So I shredded a painting for it. But I just sort of pull from where things I'm thinking about, different painting, the ways I'm working in different paintings. But then, like, the X was this funny thing where a critic had talked about this work on site I did, and all my works on site that I did all over that year had X's in them, and I really thought of them as like claiming space and negating the painting at the same time, so it did like a double meaning. But he was talking about X as being kisses, which just seemed like so silly, but also like a lot of my work is about admiration or love. It is also equally about anger too, so they're always balancing out. But so that kiss is about that, but I had somehow got Kanye West's Yeezus album early, and I was obsessed with it, and I listened to it so many times through. So this was really a portrait of that, and then the X in the Black Power movement, means something totally different. And there were a lot of like different things converging that I'm thinking about, but then I don't really know if any of that matters in the end, because it's about the strength of the painting and what you feel and how it affects you. And I think that all the ideas and the actual verbal language is transcended by something bigger in the work.
Yeah. Well, and I think, something that I think this painting depicts, and we'll move to this next one, but something that this painting depicts is that I think when we think of abstraction, and you can kind of get that sense in this Joan Mitchell painting, who was, sort of this like second, American movement of abstract expressionism. And so this painting was made in the 60s. But, when you think of abstraction, you think of, I think often people think of an eradication of space, and I think what your paintings do is you reclaim that space. And I think you're right that that's what the X, because the X appears, you'll see even in a lot of her installations and a lot of the future works, that the X, a lot of these gestures reappear, but in totally different ways. I mean, when I say that every time I go into Sarah's studio, she's working on a whole new body of work, by whole new body of work, I mean not just the fact that they are new paintings, but it's like new ideas all the time, new materials, like completely re-transforming herself every single time you work on a new body of work, which I think is, that's hard to do. I mean, I have a lot of respect for someone who can, go into the studio and be like, you know what, all that shit that I did before, I'm doing something new. Get ready for it. I think it's really great. But the reason, the reason I think the Joan Mitchell and this speak to me is that abstract expressionism, as many know, was sort of a man's world when it first started. I think people thought of it as an extension of their masculinity, we will say, often defined in that way, with thinking of like the drip paintings of Jackson Pollock.
But
and
a lot of times their wives were doing it too. It's just
their wives
history that
were
made
always
it
doing it. Exactly. So it was the canon in art history. And so what I'm interested in is the ways in which female artists reclaim these spaces, but in a really kind of bold way. Because yes, Jackson Pollock was married to Lee Krasner. Lee Krasner, a lot of those things that Jackson was doing, I think that, when you look at the dates of their paintings, she was actually doing it, and she was doing it a little earlier than him. I'm just saying. I'm not going to get into this whole debate. But
it's a really touchy thing, but I think that's something similar, less than gender, but maybe sensibility, is Joan Mitchell's relationship to poets and being in Paris and John Ashbery. And I didn't know another artist we have coming up also was close with Ashbery, and the people that sort of raised me in San Francisco were poets and queer culture, and this thing that it's just like this different form of moving through space that it has something to do with a poetic, emotional nature that I don't really know how to talk about it fully, but when I see these together, I'm like, oh, there's like distinct poetry that's similar.
And I think it's in the
which
color.
Has to do with openness maybe, and the way you experience the world and how you move through the world.
Right. But I also think that there's like when you do talk about your use of color, I think that, I've read a number of things, and I've even said it myself, is that, people often describe the works as very sort of girly colors,
Drives me crazy.
I know it does. Yeah. And so, because it's true. I mean, it's not always.
I use every color possible.
I know. And even the gestures too, I think, but because there is a prominence of pinks and purples and things like that, that people automatically go there. But what I really like, and what you all will see as we get to we have an image of it here, but when you can see in person, is that Sarah's constantly complicating that definition by incorporating.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah, of
but
course.
It's just it's a bummer to me that that's going to be the tagline when what I'm doing is way more sophisticated than that.
Yeah.
But
No, I mean, well, and that's where I think, especially the work upstairs, Love Seat, it's almost like you're giving a little bit of a middle finger to the whole concept, because on the left-hand side, well, we'll get to it, but it's on the left-hand side, there's a heart with this like super gestural, abstract splash, because women are crazy and emotional, and and then there's this right-hand side of this hard edge abstraction of blue and yellow, and so really kind of showing this, what has been, I don't know, art historically constructed, this sort of pairing between what is a more feminine gesture and what is a more masculine gesture.
Whole world constructed.
Yeah, culturally constructed, yes, exactly.
This was a funny one, kind of off that, actually. This was just cracked me up, the idea of naming it Witchcraft and
it being a broom.
Yeah, and it being a broom, but also like I was dating a man who was in a coven, which just cracked me up to no end, and it was like the most diverse group of witches possible. And he had the staff. He's a totally brilliant, but he had the staff.
Here
the
we
wizard
go.
staff leaning against the wall, and it's just like I would like see it and just think, what? I'm dating a wizard? This is so funny. Yeah, this was my funny. And the thing is, I know art history very well, but I don't like obsess over knowing it all because I'm doing something that's my own. But I didn't know the Jasper Johns piece with the broom, and MCA San Diego acquired this, and they thought it was all based on that. And I was like, no, it's totally not based on that. But
it's actually my boyfriend who is in a coven.
Yeah, and this is the community studio broom that when I glued it on my canvas, the landlord was just so mad. And,
really?
Yeah, and I was like, I bought you a better broom. And she's like, that's my property. And,
Thank you.
She said she wanted a cut in the sale. And I was like,
really?
I don't know.
For your $10 broom, I will give you your $10. I accept. No, but what I think is interesting, and as Sarah says, because it is always hard when you are making connections and comparisons to works that have come before, because it's never about mimicry. It's just the fact that trying to understand that artists working today are not only responding to everything, every sort of way of making, every art historical anything that has been sort of jammed into our brains when we're in school, that's not all, it's not only that that's all there, but also responding to the world and finding new ways of visually articulating what's happening in the world, socially, culturally, politically. And I think that, your work is often discussed formally, but I think that it is very political, that it's about
the everyday.
Yeah.
And, I actually kind of think, I don't totally know how to talk about this, but the collage, I feel like in the 70s, something was broke in our awareness with like freedom and art. And I think that I use collage in a sense related to that everything is fair game and my life is the work, and there's just like this openness between it and the materials. Like the broom is in my studio, so therefore I'm just going to pick it up and glue it on the canvas. And there's like that, it's just this collage of like accessibility and freedom to use everything around me.
Right, which is almost, kind of going to this showing, the people that sort of were also working, Robert Rauschenberg, his combines, and this work, Bed. I mean, this was, when he made this work, he had no money.
Yeah.
And so he found whatever he could find to paint on because he couldn't do anything but make. And so this has paint on it, obviously, but it also has toothpaste, and it also has a pillow, and it also has, this is his own bed. And so I think, to Sarah's point, is that often, it is expensive. Like when you look at the cost of paint and you look at the cost of canvases, and when you start to have conversations with artists, especially artists who work quite large, it is very expensive to make work. And so I think that it's the way that you're able to kind of do both, of use what's accessible, not only to engage with the everyday and to engage with the literal sort of physical world around you, but also, still it's this like really beautifully constructed composition and canvas and painting. Like, I really think that it's, there's always this level of polish in your work that
It's funny because I think there's such a level of funk.
I know. Well,
there's
but
both.
it's like, it's a polished funk.
Yeah, I love the balance of extremes.
That's a new thing. We're gonna call you polished funk.
Well, thank you.
And this is the one, I actually have never seen this.
Very few people have.
I would never look at this and say, oh, that is a Sarah Cain. I mean, I would
so
maybe think of
early.
it. So tell me about this work. I don't even know what to ask you about this.
I had my studio in upstate New York in this amazing couple's house. It was a schoolhouse, 8,000 square foot schoolhouse, and when I had no money, they would let me come and spend the summers with them. And she was a painter. And I had gone away, and then I went back to my studio, and they had painted the floor gray, and it broke my heart because it was this beautiful wooden floor, but they were selling it. So I did this piece where I instantly took the razor blade and took up the gray, and also, I guess, I don't know, I mean, I love Agnes Martin's writings were like super important to me in undergrad, and I'd been reading them a lot. And this is after undergrad and before grad school. So this photo of her in Galisteo, which actually I just went, her house in Galisteo is for sale, so I just went and looked at it.
You
and
did?
I'm not gonna buy it, but we pretended we were. And so it was really amazing to go there because these colors, like this is a black and white photo, but I made this painting, and some of them are Benjamin Moore paints based on like desert colors and stuff, so I guess there's some, you know, you got it right in that, and then the top is actually chipped away at the color, the wall paint underneath the white, so some of the colors were pulled from that. But when I was actually in Galisteo and in her house, in her studio, I collected all these rocks, and those are totally the colors of Galisteo. Maybe the yellow, not fully, but that pinkish salmon thing is all in the rocks there. And this is actually like what I was talking about with the Santa Barbara. They're just like my sort of muses on people or places or albums or, you know, other things that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and was this the first time that you worked sort of in space in this way, where you were working on the floor and the wall?
No, but I did a body of like 20 of these in
did.
abandoned buildings at this time, because my idea was, okay, I'm not gonna have a job somehow, and I would just like work for 2 weeks every few months and get enough and then quit and then go, and I wasn't gonna have a house, so I just stayed wherever I could, and I had 3 suitcases. And it was a way, you know, just to keep pushing my practice, and I would document it. And the reason most people haven't seen this is because I just have like a tiny slide somewhere.
Yeah.
But these were the first early works on site, and I hadn't yet started making canvases. I made some works on paper, but they were still really ephemeral too.
Yeah. And so leading into the site-specific works, this is a piece that you did at Marfa, and I am really interested in the relationship between the canvases and the site-specific works, because often the site-specific works, they're either temporary or they're, you know, outdoors, and so you have little, you know, you don't have a lot of control over what happens. And so I wonder if you can sort of talk a little bit about when you encounter a space, do you take those things into consideration? Like, what's your thought process? And sometimes you incorporate, you know, furniture or objects. And so I'm interested to know your kind of thinking around that, because each time I see one of your site-specific installations, again, they're totally different, like a total different use of space.
Well, they're very different spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always thinking about the space. Usually I do a site visit. This actually is in a former Masonic lodge in Marfa, Texas, on the main drag. So I met with Masons. I just tried to learn as much as I could, and I loved the idea that it was a fraternity and I could get in there and do whatever I wanted. I mean, it wasn't anymore, but it had also been a flower shop right before, so a lot of the history of the building was in it. That piece of furniture is one of the first times there's furniture in the work. This furniture was in the space, and it was being used as a bar with a door over top of it. So I made 5 works on site and 1 other big canvas in 9 days in the Masonic Lodge. And I hated this bar. I just felt like it was just so gross and dirty to me. It's like this should be in a dump, this piece of furniture, but I had to. So I was like, I can't even fit it out the door. I don't want to touch it. I'll just use it. So a lot of the times, like, the things I use are just there and a problem, and I make them better.
She does. Even exit signs.
Oh yeah, exit signs, wheelchair pathways, like everything so now I just sort of think about everything I need to think about in the museum, and that's like a material. It's the same way there's a bead or string. Yeah, and then I have done some exterior works, and I know if they're going to be permanent, then I think about the materials much differently, but not too many of them are. This one's permanent for as long as LAN, Los Angeles Nomadic Division, has their office here. I got to do this corner, which is a really crazy corner. It's called, the piece is called
Hey Babe, Take a Walk on the Wild
Hey
Side.
Babe, Take a Walk on the Wild Side. There's a lot of trans prostitution. This is the epicenter of it in West Hollywood. So I did this in 3 days. I got a pimp showed me his wad of cash. I got flashed a gun. I saw these crazy fights. A homeless lady, go in the bathroom in the street so she didn't get any raped or whatever. Like, it was a crazy corner. And then I just had like runaway kids tell me how much it changed their day to see this every day. Mm-hmm. One of the girls came up to me and said, like, you captured this corner perfectly. Like, that really, this changed the way I think about making works on site, and I want to do a lot more permanent ones that really hone into the energy of the space.
Right.
In 5 years, this corner probably will not feel like that anymore.
Right.
It's all the art world's there.
I know, I was going to say, Regan Projects is right across the street now,
They've
right?
been there for a while.
Okay.
But a lot of other people are
moving in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I talked to you, because you and I were talking when you were working on this, and something that I thought was interesting that you said, and I hope it's okay that I'm sharing, is that you took into consideration that people may tag this.
Oh yeah.
That people may come and so she's like, so I want to make it so that if someone does tag it, it looks like it's a part of the work. Like it's like
as long as then I would get rid of it. It's sealed with an anti-graffiti. So the hilarious thing was, the first tag I got said, "Punk is not dead," and LAN sent it to me, and they're like, "This is so cool," and I was like, "Yeah, send me a photo of the whole thing with it." I was like, "There's a swastika above it. You cut that out of the photo. That's not too cool. We gotta get rid of this right away." But then I saw it on Instagram, and I was like, "Motherfucker, somebody tagged it," but it must have been an artist. They tagged it to look like mine, but it's a color I never use, so that was sneaky. But the best thing is, I mean, maybe it was in a fight, but I think one of the ladies threw her pink high heel shoe on the roof, and that's on there now, and it's the same pink as the pink I use. So that is staying.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
No, it's great. It's great. I don't know if we should go back to this. I just wanted to kind of give an example of, artists who, because I think that Sarah thinks completely outside of the canvas, the gallery, the museum. Like, even when you're working in your studio, there's elements from nature that are being brought in, or there'll be like a feather or some coral. I mean, it's really kind of this constant back and forth engagement with the world and the ways that canvases can be displayed. And so Daniel Byrne, it's like this really interesting kind of play with people wearing the canvases. I feel like this is, and there is a lot of humor in your work, but I feel like this is kind of, taking it to this interesting sort of performative level. But I think that that's what really draws me to your site-specific works, is because you are figuring out new ways of applying.
Yeah. But him and also Nikki, they're both very much about the body, which the stripes are the distance between his eyes. She totally is dealing with the body and with anger and processing it. There's a film of this where she's made this painting that has like balloons filled with pigment, I think, and then she paper mache and paints white, and she's shooting it, but she's doing this rant in French about her father, which I didn't know until I recently read her Wikipedia page, that she was raped by her dad at 11. Like, it all makes a lot of sense now, but you feel it in it, and it's such a great way to like go from white to then have all this color.
With such a violent act, and so
but then you have this sexy woman speaking in French while she's doing it, so like the contradiction is just amazing, and like what a way to claim space.
Right, and she, the interesting thing about her too is that, there's all these, she's like quite stunning actually as well, and so there's these pictures of her with her gun, and there's even was like this whole thing where she's like pointing the gun at the camera and really sort of dramatic, and the camera like
Yeah, I was wondering,
comes in.
I think it's before Valley Export. I was kind of wondering art history-wise. They're
Oh,
probably
yeah.
the same size time, but done differently, but an interesting
Yeah,
sort of...
but an interesting way of thinking of, because I know that you know, like you said, by cutting the canvas and doing those things, is that there's this element of chance and this element
Yeah.
of not really knowing. And I would sort of think, I think that she's doing something similar of, you know, she's selecting the colors, she's selecting where those colors are, but then when she shoots, you have no
And she lets
idea.
other people shoot it,
Yeah, I
too.
saw that. I
Yeah.
saw a picture of like her and a group of guys, and everyone had different guns. But this was, you know, and it wasn't simply just flat canvases. You know, these were like larger constructions where some of them took the form of a house, or some of them took, you know, so she really, and I think that it's something that I see a lot in your work, is this freedom to play with the way that pigment is applied to the surface, but also the other objects that can engage with that to sort of enhance or add or sort of amend those gestures in a way.
Yeah.
So here's another site-specific work, and the X comes back. I love this.
This was
I
so
hadn't
fun
seen.
to
I
do.
don't think I had seen this image until today.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. I threw it from the inside, but like it just flooded the gallery. But I did such a good job in prep. It didn't leak.
Really?
Yeah, but it was really fun to do. And then I don't know if there's a great sight line through the X's I probably didn't show you, but you can see all the way back, like
Through the gallery.
5,000 square feet.
Oh, really?
Back. Yeah.
And did you just tape them out and then splash the paint and then?
Yeah, and then a lot of cleanup. I mean, I'm kind of like masterly at weird ways to get paint off things, so.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And then this is just Janine Antoni, another example of this kind of fun sort of exploration of not only how to use your body and how to create you know, I would think of these as self-portraits, these, you know, where she's dragging her hair and there's this, you know, remnant of her body and her handprints and her hair and her.
It's a funny twist on voyeurism and using the body, and it's like I think about Eve Klein's naked ladies throwing their bodies down, and this, but
and
I'm
him
like,
dragging
this is
them
so
around.
much radder,
Yeah.
You know, and she's doing it with hair dye, and just to think about the smell and what that must have been like. It's such a physically painful yet mesmerizing, beautifully body thing to watch.
Well, and I think
I saw this as a teenager, like maybe 12 or 13. I don't know. It was one in the first books I asked my parents for, like feminism in art or something, and I was like, yes, like I'm gonna do this.
I'm gonna drag my hair. No, I have to. I mean, I think this is a response to the Eve Klein, where it was nude women
Is it?
who I don't know.
Do you know?
Are you asking
No, you don't
Rebecca?
know. Yeah.
Hi, Rebecca. Because it was him using women's bodies as a tool to apply pigment to a canvas. And it was a performance. So there were people there watching as these women were paid to be dragged all over the canvas.
Were they paid? I hope they were.
I didn't even think about that. I just
Probably
assumed
not.
that they were paid.
Paid
Come
sex.
on. Okay. So this is one of Sarah's most recent installations. I sadly did not have a chance to go see it. But again, thinking of the entire space. And how many days did you do this?
This also 9 days. I had 2 weeks, but I did this in 9 days. Their mattresses, there's a mattress on the back wall, but I've been making benches. First they were benches based on my proportions, and then it just sort of moved out. But this is called the Imaginary Architecture of Love, and I really wanted people to chill out and sit with painting because they don't enough, and I wanted to create a really immersive environment that people would want to stay in.
And they could lay on the
They could lay on
mattresses?
the mattresses, yeah. I would not do this in New York or LA or any place dirty, but it felt fine to do in Raleigh for a short period of time.
Any place dirty. No, but I actually thought this was interesting. One, it shows the X's again, but I think of the mattresses as sort of substitutes for bodies in a way. Like, I don't know if that's reading.
Exorcism. I think of the X's as bodies, like, but I don't care if anyone else does. But to
Yeah.
me, it was really about like imaginary architecture of love. This idea of coupling. There's single. There's three. There's two.
Yeah.
They're changing all the time.
Yeah, and this was something that we talked about. This is another Nikki de Saint Phalle, and this is a very sort of well-known installation where you can see it as a large-scale sculpture that people enter through the woman's vagina, and but it's not.
Amazing.
It's not like a obviously it's not human. It's like it suddenly becomes okay because
Well, there's a
of
bar inside too. So
Right.
people had a destination.
incentive to go inside.
And I didn't know, I don't know how you pronounce Han, but I didn't know that the actual title is Han. It's like, it's something like
Oh yeah,
She a Cathedral.
yeah.
Which is strange because driving here, I don't know why driving here, maybe because of the Blanton, I just saw Ellsworth Kelly's sketch and I was thinking about the Rothko Chapel, and I've been wanting to make this big house, but I don't yet know what it's going to be. But then I thought maybe it should be like a place of, solitude or worship or something. And then I started thinking, did any women make cathedrals or, worship places? And then when I Googled to see what the actual title meant, that blew me away. And I love the idea that if it is a cathedral, or if it's like where this is based on Catholicism, but if it's about the afterlife, that you would go out of life through the vagina the same way you would come into it, which just cracks me up.
I just want to see this installed somewhere and people going in and spending time in the bar.
I don't think it exists anymore.
I don't think it does either.
But.
This was your most recent show that the work that's upstairs was in on our Fraser.
Most recent gallery show.
Yeah. And this, again, I just wanted to show as a way, that you utilize space. So there were, an installation of her objects, and then this room, an entire side of it was taken. And you can see that there's painting directly on the wall. There's, loose sort of canvases or loose material that's hung from the ceiling. There's canvases.
Bunch of prisms in there.
Yeah. Prisms that you can't see. I think there's even the dollar bill paintings. Were there?
Not in there.
Okay.
And then there was a row, the same dimensions of benches pushed against the wall. And I love the idea of like a drive-in movie theater, or going like sometimes like people from the 50s call paintings. Like a critic friend, he still says looking at pictures when he's looking at paintings, which is just a funny, and I always think of going to the pictures as going to the movies. So I was thinking about like, what if this was going to the pictures? What would the...
Oh yeah. But and even, this idea kind of like the Nikki de Saint Phalle sculpture, it's like you're entering this space, it's like you're entering this environment. And so rather than having this relationship with a painting where you're standing and you're looking at it and there's a definite distance between yourself and the object, it's suddenly that barrier is totally broken and you get to experience painting in a completely different way that's immersive. And it's great because
it's present tense, which is really important. Like
yes.
You're experiencing the work almost in the same moment that it was made, so it doesn't have like an artifact feeling.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, I'm going to skip some of these. I'm going to skip these. Okay, so now this is the work we have in our collection. Yeah. So this I saw, it was like, I don't even know, I saw an image of it somewhere and I think I called the gallery immediately and was like, I have to have this. Please put it on hold for me. But this was the first time that I had seen you use furniture. And so this to me, even though you incorporated furniture with some of the site-specific work, this to me is like the combination between your paintings and the site-specific work. And I really, like, this totally blew me away. And this is what I was talking about with the heart and the sort of expressive sort of gesture that's dripping, and then these kind of hard edge lines, and thinking of Love Seat not only as the fact that it is a love seat, but also thinking of love and couples and difference,
all the different seats.
All the different seats. And so when we're getting close to time, and I want to make sure that people can ask questions if they want to, but when did you begin, like, how did you think of it? Was it just like to start to use the furniture in this way?
The broom actually is the first thing that started. When I put the broom on the canvas, I thought, okay, I want to do a body of work that's one object, one canvas. And I've been doing that. Like, there's things that are like that, but I wasn't consciously thinking about it. So for this show, I thought I'll do one object, one canvas works. And then from that, I did a giant palm and a canvas. And then it was like, okay, let's do furniture. And I'd been eyeing this piece of furniture in my neighbor's yard for a long time. and his fiance left him, and he had bought it for her for Valentine's Day, and I was like, can I have it now? Like, she's gone, can I have it? And he was like, yeah, you can have it. So, and then it just felt, you know, like their history, and actually 3 houses in a row, LA style neighbors, 3 breakups happened, and I was like, let's just make a portrait of this like painful moment where everyone's figuring out where they're gonna go next. And I really wanted to put a heart in this, and I've done a lot of paintings with hearts. Not a lot, I've done like 3 recently, and it's like, it makes me cringe, but I'm like, if I can do it and feel like it works, then I've like beat a conflict or something.
Yeah,
so,
and it does.
Yeah,
and it does
has
work.
a pearl necklace in it too.
It does have a pearl
hilarious.
necklace. It is hilarious. This is another work that was in the show that kind of shows the continuation and the bold sort of badassness of the way that you treat objects. You know, by having this dresser and slapping a canvas on the back of it and painting it, half of it, and then having a canvas on the back and having this other
the live flowers.
And the live flowers. It's really, I mean, it's incredible work. And I should say, since I want to make sure people can ask questions, that Sarah's work is in the collection of the Blanton Museum, and they have work up right now. So next time you're in Austin, check it out. Yeah. You have work all over Texas.
Right now, yeah, this will be
You're
in
kind
Dallas,
of like, so she's also going to have a booth in Dallas. So if anybody wants to see more of her work, it'll be at the Dallas Art Fair. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This has been great.
Yeah,
I feel like time always goes by so fast with you. No, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so I want to let people ask a couple questions, though I can't actually see any of you. So, yes, go ahead.
Quick question about that one that's called Fraser.
Yeah.
Los Angeles. Was that Trump
Anna
Love?
Fraser.
Was that Trump Love, or was that the floor and the walls?
It was the floor, the wall, and the ceiling.
Yeah.
So it's 3 feet deep, and this whole.
Kind of hard to tell from the photo.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the difficult thing with the site-specific
But even in real
work.
life, you get a little like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels flat, and then you walk up to it.
Yeah.
You get a little
Satisfying.
crazy.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the quote-unquote feminine colors.
Yeah.
Because in reading about your work from other writers, I think the thing that's always frustrated me is the manner in which those colors are framed as feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact of the matter is that colors have to do with socialization to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But I've always understood those colors to just be fierce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not feminine in any way, but really capturing some sort of fierceness. Can you talk about that?
No, I totally agree, and I'll tell you who you can talk to. But yeah, it's totally about. They're like a sensory and excitement and sensual attack and celebration. And that's what, I love color, and I'm a colorist, and I can mix any color, and it's really the love of color and how color can. I was really into synesthesia a long time ago, and the idea that color can, represent other things is important. And I just think it's a limitation on the way people think and I know I am inversing ideas of femininity in a positive way, and I'm conscious of that, but to just access it from that mindset is a drag. But
It's true. It's true. Any other questions? No? All right.
thank you so much.
So the galleries are now open, so everyone please check out the new contemporary galleries. Thank you.